friends, this is Sam B from Bumblebee Acres Farm, and today I am going to show you how to knit the bind off. It is an 8-step bind off for the Alpine Meadow Shawl. I am using a little bit of a rounder yarn. This is Bumblebee Acres Farm's marshmallow worsted yarn base. It will show you the definition on camera a little bit better. But what we are going to do first is I am going to show you how to do this little lumped bump over section down here. It is done knitting 2 together through the purl in the back. You can kind of see them sandwiched together back here, a little bit doubled up in the back. Then we are going to do some knit 2 togethers yarn overs, and then a knit 1 purl 1 row, and then I'm going to show you how to do the knotted knit 2 together bind off, which is super easy, super fun, and super stretchy. So it is going to look so good binding off that stockinette stitch. Another good thing about this bind off is it is going to prevent your edges from rolling on your shawl. So once you wet block the shawl as the instructions tell you to do, you will notice that your shawl does not roll up at all. I will show you right now. So this is my finished shawl edge here. I have already blocked this guy, and you can see that even though this is all stockinette stitch with just this cute border, it does not curl up at all. It stays right where it needs to be, and it has lovely drape to it as well. So let's get into this, and I will show you exactly how to make this. Hi everybody. So first things first, you can see that I have a square stockinette with garter border, little sample swatch knit up here to show you guys exactly what we're doing. I am using Bumblebee Acres Farm marshmallow worsted because it is a nice round yarn, and hopefully you can see it pretty good. It has, it is superwash, unlike the Pygora DK that the shawl is originally done out of, and I was hoping that you'd be able to see the stitch definition a little bit better. As you can see these purls pretty good, and the knit side pretty well too. So in the pattern for the bind off, the first thing you are going to do is you are going to knit straight across 1 row, and you are going to not do any increases. You are going to remove your stitch markers, and then you are going to purl the wrong side. This is going to give you a nice setup where you don't have any recently worked yarn overs along your spine or along the edges. You can't see that here on this sample, but you know, along your center, you know what I mean. Also, your garter edge of your shawl is not going to have any purl bumps recently, and you'll see why that is important in a moment. So our first step is to pick up the purl row below, and hopefully my needles, I don't have any straight needles, so hopefully these don't bump around. We are going to pick up the purl row below and knit 2 together. So if you look at your wrong side, you're going to want your right side facing you, but you're going to turn your project over a little bit to see your wrong side. You're going to see the purl bumps from the row that you just knit. Now we are going to knit into the one below that. So it's going to be the second purl bump below. So it will be this guy here, this guy here, this one, this one, this one, and so on. So we are going to do that by picking it up and placing it onto our needle, and you can see they are right there together, and we are going to knit 2 together like so. So let me repeat this. So we're not picking up this guy, we're picking up the second one below. We're going to place that onto our needle, and we're going to knit 2 together. Now, this is, I am going to have to fiddle around a little bit, so you can see I kind of slip knit mine because I don't want my stitches to be twisted. I purl in a weird way. It's because I knit continental. So what you want to do is make sure, you can see on this stitch right here, that it looks like you can't see what you just did. It's very clean. So we're going to do this again. We're going to pick up not this purl and not this little loop here. You want the one directly below. You can see that like when you make your purl stitches, basically it's an upside down purl here. You don't want to pick up that. You want to pick up not this one, this guy right here. And I am going to kind of slip knit mine because I do it backwards. If you can knit two together and it isn't turned around, that's perfect. But you will see that we're going to get this little ridge here. And let's just keep doing it. So pick up the stitch below. I'm going to grab mine, slip knit it, and put it on together. I will show you, let me turn around my stitches so I can show you exactly what most people will see. So I am just turning my stitches around. And then that way I can pick up not this guy, put it directly on my needle, and then knit two together through there. And see, same deal. You just want to make sure that your stitches are not twisted in any way because that will throw off the effect. Basically, it's going to look like stocking knit, but with like a little bumped out ridge because we're basically doubling up our stitches. So I am going to do this the rest of the row, and this was a knit two together one. Pick up that stitch below, place it on the needle, knit two together. And it's super simple, and you just work this the whole rest of the round. I am going to do that and then get back to you. Okay, so I'm slip knitting mine now because again, my stitches are on the needle in the other direction. But I'll get back to you when we get to the end of the row and I'll show you what we do next. Okay guys, so I am finished. As you can see, I have a little bit of this bump, purl bump kind of showing. It's not as visible on this end, and I think it has to do with my tension. It might be an issue that you face as well. What you can do is you can see where this little bump leads from. It leads from this stitch right here, the one that we just worked. So if you go through and you just pull that leg, I would just pull the same leg and just clean it up a little bit. It's not a big deal. On my shawl, I had it showing. But if you want it to look super clean and neat and that's bothering you, you can just go through and do that. It's pretty easy. Of course, this one I'm having a hard time picking up, but it is pretty easy to fix. And then you can see it all looks a little bit neater on that side that I did already. I'm gonna go back and do this end that I didn't really do. I'm pretty sure it's just when I knit two together, I pull that stitch pretty tight in the opposite direction. So I'm going to stretch it out and then we can see what this guy looks like. So you have worked this all, and the reason we did this is because our shawl is almost completely stockinette. So we don't want the edge to roll. When we block our finished shawl, it will help the rest of the project from curling up like this, but the very end of our shawl may still want to curl up. So this helps pull the tension and give some weight in the other direction. Now let's go on to our second step. Our second step, or row 2 of our bind off, is just to purl the wrong side. So just flip over and purl, and I'm going to do that and then get back to you with row 3. So after we have purled that side, we can flip us back over to the right side again and see how nice and cute that edge is. It's just a cute little bump out, and back to the stockinette. So now our next step is going to knit two together, yarn over the entire right side row. So this is something you should be familiar with. Again, I am just going to do this and get back to you in a moment. Now, when you get to the last few stitches on your needle, if you do not end with 2 stitches to knit 2 together, this is no big deal at all. Just like say if we had a 3rd stitch on there, all you have to do is yarn over, knit 2 together, yarn over, and knit 1, just to give us a nice clean edge on that edge. But I have already measured this out to be an even stitch, so that is not something we have to worry about here. All right, our next step is to knit the wrong side row. So I'm going to do that and get back to you. But so far, this is what our project should look like. Okay, so that is that. When we flip over to our right side, oops, sorry, about the clinking metal needles, it should look like this. Now we are on to row 5 now, which is a right side row, and this is the initial setup of our very last step, our bind off final step. So our bind off final step is built off of a knit 1, purl 1 row. We are going to knit 1, purl 1 this whole row, and we want to make sure we end on a knit 1. So whatever you do, just make sure that you are ending on a knit 1. If you are not lining up perfectly, I just throw in an extra little stitch and knit 1 on that. All you have to do to throw in a stitch is just pick up a leg like this guy, throw it onto your needle, and just do that. And it won't matter because it's the very end corner of your shawl. But it's nothing to worry about, but we are going to knit 1, purl 1 this entire row. So one thing that you will notice, I want to add in real quick, is that you will be knitting the knit 2 together that you did below, and you will be purling the rows that are right directly above your yarn overs. And that will make sure that we are all on the same page. So you always want to purl that stitch that is over the yarn over and knit the one that is over the knit 2 together. It's not a big deal if you do it the opposite way. It will make your edge look just slightly different. It may not be super obvious to someone who isn't closely examining it, but it will just give it a slightly different look. So I recommend for yours to look exactly like mine is make sure you're purling over those yarn overs and knitting those knit 2 togethers. Okay, let's finish this up. So now that we are on to our very last section, we are going to have the wrong side facing us, and we are going to do what is called a knotted knit 2 together bind off. Now this starts exactly with the first 2 stitches, so there's no setup since we did a knit 1, purl 1, ending with a knit 1 on our previous row. Your first stitch should be a purl stitch. You should have this little bump, and so we can immediately go into our knotted knit 2 together bind off. So the first thing you do is you slip your first 2 stitches onto your right needle with your yarn in the back. That's very important. Now you're going to bring your yarn forward in front of your left hand needle and slip these 2 stitches back onto your needle. You are going to wrap around and bring your yarn to the back, and then you are going to knit these 2 stitches together and slip off. Then your next step is to purl and bind off the next stitch. And you'll know that this is right because the stitch will be a purl, so you're going to always be purling your purl stitch. And that was the first step to the knotted knit 2 together bind off. So we are going to do it again. We already have our first stitch slipped onto this needle, so we just have to slip this stitch over, bring the yarn to the front of our left hand needle and slip both stitches back on, pull our yarn around, that's the wrap, and you're going to pull it to the back, and then you're going to knit 2 together. It's actually kind of fun and it's super easy. And you'll see that this is creating a nubby, almost garter-like textured edge. So then next step is to purl and bind off. And then we are going to do the knotted knit two together again. Slip yarn over, or slip stitch over, bring yarn to the front, slip both stitches back to your left hand needle, wrap working yarn around to the back, knit two together, and then do a purl bind off. See how easy that is? And see how cute this little bumpy edge is? And that's what it's going to look like from the front. Let's flip it over and show you. How cute is that? It kind of mimics a garter edge, which is why I liked using it. So when our shawl is finished, it's going to kind of mimic and look like a fancier version, like I said, of the top of your shawl. Another good thing about this bind off is that it prevents your edge from curling. So once you block out your shawl, it is not going to curl up on you at all. Okay, so we are on to, and you can tell if you stop in the middle of this because you have a lot of stitches to bind off, just remember that if your next stitch on your needle is a knit stitch, then you are ready to do your knotted knit two together bind off. If it's a purl, then you just do well, I should say your knotted knit two together stitch. If it's a purl like this one, then that means that you're ready to just purl it and then do the slip over bind off. So this is a knit stitch, so that means that I slip it over, bring yarn to the front, move both stitches back to my left hand needle, wrap my yarn, and knit two together. Purl stitch, so we are going to purl and then bind off. And there you have it. So I'm going to keep doing this all the way to the end. Another good thing about this edge is it's nice and stretchy. So you just can keep a regular tension the whole time you are knitting this. You don't have to worry about, I wouldn't say knit any tighter or looser than you did in your previous rows, and you should have a nice stretch. Not too stretchy and not too loose. It's kind of just right to bind, to block out that stockinette. So we are going to do our wrap around, knit two together, purl and bind off. And it kind of has like a really fun rhythm to doing this. I really enjoyed doing it as a bind off because I didn't have to stress out about making my stitches too loose or too tight, and it's just so cute. And there you have it. So then just cut your yarn, pull it through, and weave in your ends. And let's look at this guy from the front. See how cute and nubby this is? And then it will block out beautifully. And it looks so much like garter stitch. It is crazy how much it looks like garter stitch. Look at this. Doesn't it look so much like it? A little more spread out, but that's just the nature of knitting. And there you have it. That's your bind off. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial.